Somewhere in the middle of all the noise, the arguing, the streaming numbers flying across timelines, and the endless "who won the beef" arguments that will not die, something just broke that nobody saw coming. And if you blink, you are going to miss the biggest turn this whole story has taken since the summer of Not Like Us. Because the 85 South show just sat down, opened the mic, and said the one sentence Drake never wanted to hear leave a comedy studio. And it is echoing through every group chat, every barbershop, every timeline, and every corner of the culture as we speak. Leave Kendrick alone. 3 words. That is it. That is the whole verdict. And when Karlous Miller, DC Young Fly, and Chico Bean, 3 of the most respected voices in the entire comedy and culture ecosystem, the same 3 that have sat across from Kendrick Lamar himself, the same 3 that have hosted Drake, the same 3 that broke Kai Cenat, Drewski, Cameron, and half the culture on camera, when those 3 look at each other on their own show and quietly agree that Drake needs to stop poking the bear, the entire narrative just flipped, and the flip is louder than any diss track that has dropped this year. Now step back for a second and understand what really happened in that studio, because the clip is spreading faster than anyone expected, and the reaction online is already ugly, because the 85 South boys did not clown Drake the way people expected. They gave him his flowers. They said the album is fire. They said the boy from Toronto can still rap. They said the one with the glove project is hard. They laughed at the punchlines. They replayed the smack that ass line until the room was crying. And every one of them admitted, on the record, that Drake still has the pen. So this is not a hit piece. This is not a shot. This is not a low blow. What makes this so dangerous for Drake is that it is the opposite. It is respect from 3 men who owe him nothing. 3 men from a comedy show that has hosted every side of the culture, telling him with love that the war is over and he lost the round. And if he throws again, he is going to wake up the animal he already knows can eat him alive on wax. And that is the part that is going to hurt Drake more than any diss could ever hurt him. Because when your critics dog you, you can shake it off. When your fans dog you, you can spin it. But when the culture's own comedians, the ones who make everybody laugh, the ones who sit on Drake's side of the room half the time, when they lean back on camera and say leave that man Kendrick alone, that is not a joke anymore. That is a verdict. That is the room reading you the room. And the room just told Drake that the smart move, the grown move, the legacy move, is to stop. Somewhere in the quiet of the 85 South studio, Karlous said the words that shook the timeline. He said Drake did not have to address Kendrick. He said Drake should have come out focused on himself. He said Drake is not over it, no matter how much Drake keeps telling the internet he is. And every man in that room, on cue, agreed. DC Young Fly agreed. Chico Bean agreed. Even the laughing voices in the background agreed. This is not a fan theory anymore. This is a full-court diagnosis from people the culture actually listens to. And that is why this clip is doing what it is doing right now. Because the moment a room like that turns, the streets follow, the algorithm follows, and the timeline follows. And now before we go any further into what the 85 South show said, into what it means for Drake's next move, and into what Kendrick Lamar is quietly cooking in the background while Drake keeps giving the world receipts, you need to lock in with this channel. Because the story that is about to unfold on your screen is not the story you have been told. It is not the story your favorite blogs are running. And it is not the story that is going to be safe for anybody in Drake's camp to hear. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like, and drop a comment telling me who you think is right in this room. Because the comments on this one are already going crazy and you do not want to miss what the culture is saying tonight. Now zoom back in, because the more Karlous, DC, and Chico dug into the moment on that couch, the deeper the knife went. And Drake probably did not see the knife coming because it was wrapped in a compliment. They said Drake is so talented he can drop lines like the smack that ass bar and still walk out of the booth with a hit. And everybody in the room laughed and nodded, and DC replayed it. And Chico could not stop grinning, and Karlous had to catch his breath. That is the respect. That is real respect. And the audience felt it. But right after that respect, right after the laughter died down, Karlous pivoted the whole room and said the sentence that is now clipping everywhere. Drake did not have to address Kendrick. Drake should not have kicked the hornet's nest twice. Drake should have taken the L on the round and used the silence to make hits. And that is the sentence Drake is going to think about tonight when he closes his eyes in that mansion in Toronto. Because it did not come from a hater. It came from a comedian who has laughed with him, who has sat across from him, who has hosted him on the same couch that just told the world to leave Kendrick Lamar alone. That is the sound of the room turning. That is the sound of the culture setting the terms. And Drake, whether he wants to admit it or not, heard every single word. Now step back into what the 85 South boys said about Kendrick, because this is where the tone shifts. This is where the second dagger comes out. And this is where the room did something Drake is not going to like at all. They protected Kendrick. They shielded him. They spoke about him like a sleeping lion nobody wants to poke. Karlous said, plainly, if Kendrick Lamar just dropped an album right now, one album, 141 songs if he wanted to, it would go crazy. It would flatten everything on the release schedule. It would erase every rollout in the industry overnight. It would light the streaming charts on fire before the sun came up. And DC said, laughing, that Kendrick has been frozen since the award show, frozen and waiting, frozen and watching. And the second Drake dropped his new project, the freeze thawed. That is the visual. That is the frame the whole room agreed on. A frozen animal, thawing out, opening its eyes, hearing Drake's voice in the distance. If you are Drake, that is the last picture you want painted about you on national comedy platforms. And here is the receipts moment nobody in Drake's camp can spin. Karlous, on camera, said Drake basically admitted the wound is still open, because on the new project Drake reportedly said that when he looks in the mirror, he sees how Meek felt. Meek Mill. The same Meek that got buried under back-to-back so many years ago that the meme is older than half of Drake's fan base. And now Drake is telling the world he sees Meek in the mirror. That is not a flex. That is a confession dressed up as a bar. And the 85 South boys caught it in real time, because they know what a confession sounds like when it is smuggled inside a punchline. Now stop for a second and understand what that means, because if Drake sees Meek when he looks in the mirror, then Drake already knows the answer to the question the culture keeps asking him. Drake knows what round he is in. Drake knows what round Kendrick Lamar is in. Drake knows what happens if he throws again, because he has watched what happens to the last man that threw and got buried. And that is what the 85 South show pulled out of him without ever having to sit across from him. That is the power of a comedy show that speaks the culture's language. They read Drake's own bar back to him, and the whole room went quiet for a beat, because everyone knew what it meant. And then, of course, because it is the 85 South show, the moment broke back into laughter, and Chico said the line that is now the audio of the summer. He said Kendrick is that luggage you take on the plane, the kind you never check, the kind you always carry on, because Kendrick is not letting this go. Kendrick is not moving on. Kendrick is not tired. Kendrick has one win, one legendary win, one culture-defining win, and Kendrick has not slept since he got it. That is the picture. That is the villain arc from Drake's point of view. That is why Drake is nervous tonight and every night. Because Drake knows what a rapper who does not sleep can do to a rapper who has to drop 3 albums a year just to stay visible. And now before we go further, drop your take in the comments, because the culture is split right down the middle on this, and I want to know where you stand. Do you think Drake was smart to come back swinging? Do you think Drake should have left it alone the way Meek left it alone? Do you think Kendrick already has a Not Like Us Part 2 sitting in a hard drive somewhere in Compton with the safety off? Tell me, because the comments are the culture, and the culture is the courtroom. Now let us walk into the second half of what the 85 South boys said, because the second half is where it turns from a takedown into a warning. DC Young Fly said, and this is the sentence that made the whole studio pause, that Drake needs to focus on Drake. Not on Kendrick. Not on the West Coast. Not on the pettiness. Drake needs to make hits. Because Drake can out-rap anybody on a random Tuesday, but Drake cannot out-diss Kendrick. Kendrick built his monument on the diss. Kendrick engineered the diss into an anthem, into a stadium chant, into a Super Bowl moment, into a permanent chapter of hip-hop history. You do not outbuild that monument. You walk around it. And that is where Karlous slid in with the second dagger, saying the truth every real rap fan already knows. He said, Drake, make hits, because you got it. Drake, drop the R and B, drop the lover boy, drop the Marvin's Room energy, drop the songs that the girls play when they're trying to break up with their boyfriends, because those songs are the reason Drake exists in the first place. And those songs are the reason Drake was the biggest artist in the world before this whole beef swallowed him whole. Karlous said, drop that. Level us out, Drake. Level the culture out. Because right now the streets are dry and the boyfriends and girlfriends need a Drake record to argue over again. And that request, that plea, that comedy couch plea from 3 of the most respected voices in the room, is the moment Drake needs to hear the loudest, because it is the exit ramp. It is the way out. It is the culture handing Drake a ladder out of the hole he keeps digging. And if Drake takes it, the room will forgive him. The room already respects the pen. The room already respects the catalog. The room just needs Drake to stop swinging at the mountain and go back to being the melody king he was before Kendrick Lamar became a headline he could not solve. Now zoom out for a beat and look at what Kendrick Lamar is actually doing while Drake is out here trying to solve him. Because this is the part the 85 South show did not say out loud, but it is the part every real analyst in the culture is watching. Kendrick Lamar is not in the studio arguing with anybody. Kendrick Lamar is not on Instagram Live. Kendrick Lamar is not doing radio runs, blog runs, or press runs. Kendrick Lamar is moving in the quiet. Kendrick Lamar is building an empire that has nothing to do with Drake and everything to do with generations that have not been born yet. Kendrick Lamar is turning into an executive that the industry does not have a manual for. And that silence, that intentional silence that Kendrick Lamar has practiced since the confetti fell on the Super Bowl stage, is what is haunting Drake more than any diss track ever could. Because Drake can answer a diss. Drake cannot answer silence. Drake cannot outrun a man who is not chasing. And that is why Drake keeps circling back, keeps swinging, keeps hinting, keeps subtweeting between the bars. Because Drake needs a response to feel alive in this fight, and Kendrick has starved him of it. And now step deeper into what Karlous, DC, and Chico were really saying under all the jokes, because the joke was the rapper, but the message was the meal. They were telling Drake, on the culture's behalf, that the fight is over. Not because Drake cannot rap. Not because Drake is not talented. Not because Drake is not one of the greatest to ever pick up a mic. But because the ring has moved. The ring is not where Drake keeps swinging. The ring moved to hits, to catalog, to legacy, to the songs that will still play at weddings and cookouts and graduations 20 years from now. And Kendrick is not fighting for that ring, because Kendrick is already writing his chapter in a different building. And that is the receipt's truth. That is the pressure point. That is the intersection where Drake's ego and Drake's legacy collide, and only one of them can leave the room alive. If Drake picks legacy, Drake wins the next decade. If Drake picks ego, Drake keeps writing chapters in a book somebody else is closing. Now let us dig into what Karlous said next, because Karlous, in one line, summed up the entire mood of the internet in a way even Twitter could not. He said Kendrick is petty, and everybody in the room laughed, but the laugh was not a dismissal. The laugh was recognition. Because pettiness in rap is a superpower. Pettiness in rap is what turned a battle into an anthem. Pettiness is what made Kendrick Lamar wake up one morning and decide that not liking Drake was going to be a full-length album's worth of pettiness with a beat you could dance to at your own wedding. That is a level of pettiness the culture had not seen since the golden era. And Karlous saw it. And the 85 South boys called it what it was. And now Drake is standing in the middle of the culture, holding a slice of that pettiness with his name on the receipt. And here is where the story bends again. Because the second Karlous said Kendrick is petty, DC Young Fly said something that hit even harder. DC said Kendrick has nothing else to do. Nothing else to worry about. Nothing else on his plate. No album to hurry into stores. No contract clock ticking. No label breathing down his neck. Kendrick can sit in his kitchen in Compton on a Wednesday afternoon, drinking a smoothie, and casually write another Not Like Us if he feels like it. And the world would burn again. And Drake would have to answer again. And the answer would sound like a losing hand again. That is the position Kendrick Lamar is in. That is the position Drake is not in. And the 85 South boys made sure everybody watching understood the gap. And when the room finally exhaled, when the laughter finally settled, when the beat break finally came, Karlous delivered the line that is going to run in edits and clips for the rest of the year. He said the world did not turn its back on Drake. Drake thinks it did, but it did not. The people still love the music. The people still know all the words. The people are just tired of the fight, because Kendrick won the fight, and Drake has not accepted the score. And once Drake accepts the score, the love comes back. The catalog comes back. The tour comes back. The wins come back. But Drake has to accept it first. And that acceptance, according to the 85 South show, is the only thing standing between Drake and the second act of his career. Now let us pause and appreciate what just happened in that studio, because what just happened is more valuable to the culture than any diss track that could ever drop. Three of the biggest comedians in the culture, on their own show, on their own terms, told Drake to sit down without ever telling Drake to sit down. They gave him respect, they gave him flowers, they gave him laughs, and then they gave him the mirror. And Drake, wherever he is tonight, in that Toronto mansion with the private chef and the private jet on standby, is going to see that clip. And Drake is going to feel it. Because the 85 South show is the culture's living room, and the culture just spoke. And now for the sponsors of the Broken Timeline. Tap in with your favorite comment section, because the algorithm is watching this clip in real time, and every reaction, every share, every comment is fuel. Tell me who you think won this round. Tell me if you think Drake still has a haymaker in the chamber. Tell me if you think Kendrick already recorded the sequel and is just waiting for the perfect Friday to detonate the whole thing all over again. Tell me, because your voice is going to shape the next week of headlines whether the blogs admit it or not. Now walk with me deeper into the layer nobody is talking about, because underneath the jokes and underneath the flowers, the 85 South show diagnosed something even bigger. They diagnosed Drake's identity crisis. They said, in so many words, that Drake wants to be gangster. Drake looks at YG. Drake looks at Meek Mill. Drake looks at the men who have walked the streets Drake sings about, and Drake sees a life Drake is fascinated by. And DC Young Fly, in one of the sharpest lines of the entire episode, said the part everybody has been thinking. Drake wants to be seen as a thug. Drake wants to be seen as hood. Drake wants the braids, the colors, the walk, the accent, the everything. And the culture sees it. And the culture, according to the 85 South show, is finally saying it out loud. And that is a truth that has followed Drake since the day Drake came out of the Degrassi hallway with a rap contract. Drake is a chameleon. Drake is a mirror. Drake takes on the color of whatever room Drake walks into. In Toronto, Drake is Canadian royalty. In Atlanta, Drake is a trap crooner. In London, Drake is a UK drill fan with a passport. In Houston, Drake is a slab-riding southern boy. In Los Angeles, Drake is trying to be that too. And that is exactly the room Kendrick Lamar has kicked him out of. And that is the part that stung Drake the most. Because when Kendrick said Drake is not one of us, Kendrick was not just talking about geography. Kendrick was talking about authenticity. Kendrick was talking about the years Kendrick spent growing up in Compton before Compton became a hashtag. Kendrick was talking about the funerals Kendrick attended, the friends Kendrick lost, the neighborhoods Kendrick still drives through. And when Kendrick painted that picture, the West Coast lined up behind Kendrick with a quickness the industry had not seen since the death row days. From the top of California to the bottom of California, the culture picked a lane, and Drake was not in it. And that is the receipts the 85 South show did not have to spell out, because everybody in the room already knew. Kendrick has the West. Kendrick has the culture. Kendrick has the win. And Drake has the catalog, and the catalog is beautiful, and the catalog is what Drake needs to come back to. Because the catalog is where Drake is undefeated. The catalog is where Drake is a top 3, top 5, top of the era artist without any argument. The catalog is where Drake belongs. Not on the battlefield. Not in Kendrick's ring. In the studio, making the songs the world still needs. Now zoom in on the moment the 85 South boys started imitating Drake, because that moment is where the internet is going to camp out for days. They imitated Marvin's room. They imitated the vulnerable Drake. They imitated the Drake who calls exes at 3 in the morning. They imitated the Drake who whispers into the microphone about a friend of his wife who might be into him. And every man in the room laughed, and every man in the room admitted, on the record, that they play those songs. Their girls play those songs. Their exes play those songs. The whole culture plays those songs. Because that is the Drake the world signed up for. That is the Drake the world will never stop needing. And that is the ladder. That is the exit. That is the second act. If Drake climbs back into Marvin's room, if Drake climbs back into Take Care, if Drake climbs back into Nothing Was the Same, the world climbs back into Drake. Because those albums are the reason Drake got to have this fight in the first place. Those albums are the reason Drake became the biggest artist on the planet. Those albums are the reason Kendrick Lamar had a giant worth fighting to knock down. And the giant is still standing, according to the 85 South boys, as long as the giant remembers what made him a giant. Now step back for a full breath, because the story is about to spiral one more time. The 85 South show did not just diagnose Drake. They did not just protect Kendrick. They also predicted the future, and the prediction is the most viral part of the whole clip. They said if Kendrick Lamar wakes up on a random morning and decides to drop another Not Like Us, another cultural earthquake, another summer-defining single, the game is over. Not the beef. The game. The whole game. Because Kendrick has already proven he can do it once, and the second time would be the confirmation that the first time was not luck. It was a blueprint. And that is the fear Drake is carrying tonight. Not the fear of a diss. Drake has survived 100 disses. The fear of a repeat. The fear of a pattern. The fear of a verdict written twice. Because once is a moment. Twice is history. And Kendrick Lamar, according to the 85 South show, is exactly the type of artist who would drop a second Not Like Us on a Tuesday just to prove a point. Not for money. Not for streams. Not for headlines. For the record. For the archive. For the culture that still needs a final chapter to close the book. Now let us talk about what Karlous said Drake should do next, because this is the game plan the culture is offering Drake for free. Karlous said Drake needs to get the label off his back first. Karlous said Drake needs to drop the 3 albums, deliver the streams, hit the numbers, and free himself from the paperwork that is choking him. Then Karlous said Drake needs to disappear. Karlous said Drake needs to do what Kendrick did. Go quiet. Go dark. Go into the studio. Come back with the album that makes the world forget the beef ever happened. Because the beef is not going to be remembered for who won and who lost. The beef is going to be remembered for who made the best music after the smoke cleared. And right now, that scoreboard is empty, and it is Drake's scoreboard to fill. And that is the game plan hip-hop has been waiting for. That is the exit strategy that saves the legacy. That is the second act the 85 South show sketched out on live comedy television for anybody willing to listen. And whether Drake listens or not, the culture listened. And the culture is going to hold that game plan up next to every move Drake makes from this day forward. Now zoom in on the ending of the clip, because the ending is the twist. After all the jokes, after all the mirror holding, after all the flowers to Kendrick, DC Young Fly did the one thing the internet did not expect. He defended Drake. He said, "I mess with Drake." He said, "Drake still raps for real." He said, "When Drake is against the wall, Drake becomes dangerous again, and dangerous Drake is the Drake the culture actually wants to see. Not defensive Drake. Not sad Drake. Not corner of the room Drake. Dangerous Drake. The Drake who made back-to-back. The Drake who made 5 a.m. in Toronto. The Drake who made energy. That Drake is still in the building, and the 85 South show wants that Drake to come outside. And that is the part of the clip nobody is talking enough about, because the entire culture is so hungry for the takedown that they forgot the room was also handing Drake a rope. And the rope is the second wind. The rope is the redemption arc. The rope is the second half of the movie where the underdog remembers who he is and rides again. Drake is not out of the movie. Drake is between scenes. And the 85 South show, in their own way, told him the next scene is his to write. Now step back into the meta of what this clip means for the algorithm, for the culture, for the timeline, for the record labels watching all of this from behind glass walls in Los Angeles, New York, and Toronto. Because the fact that the 85 South show is even having this conversation, on this record, at this volume, tells you the industry has already read the room. The industry knows Kendrick Lamar won. The industry knows Drake needs to pivot. And the industry knows the audience will follow the artist who evolves faster than the news cycle. And here is the receipts truth nobody in the boardroom will say out loud. Kendrick Lamar has already changed the rules of the beef itself. Before Kendrick, a diss track was a moment. After Kendrick, a diss track is a franchise. A merch line. A stadium tour. A Super Bowl performance. A cultural referendum. Kendrick redefined the ceiling of what a rap beef could become. And now every artist who steps into a beef in the next decade is going to be measured against what Kendrick built. That is a haunting standard. That is the reason Drake is looking at the mirror and seeing Meek. Because the mirror is not showing Drake a loss. The mirror is showing Drake a genre-shifting event that Drake was on the wrong side of. Now zoom in on Chico Bean's quietest line of the whole episode, because Chico said something that got lost in the laughter, but is actually the loudest sentence of the clip. Chico said this is good for the culture. Chico said the fight, the tension, the smoke, all of it, is good for the culture. Because the culture eats when the giants argue. The culture eats when the pens move. The culture eats when the fans debate. And the culture just ate for 2 years straight because of Kendrick and Drake. And the second Chico said that, the whole room agreed, because it is true. The whole rap industry has been living off the fumes of this rivalry. Streaming numbers are up. Debate shows are up. Podcasts are up. Blog traffic is up. The rap economy just got a Kendrick and Drake stimulus check, and everybody is cashing it. And that is why the culture is not going to let this story end. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Because the story is the goose that keeps laying gold. Every time Drake breathes near Kendrick, the timeline sets fire. Every time Kendrick blinks near Drake, the timeline sets fire again. And the 85 South show just poured gasoline on the whole thing by telling the world their honest verdict. And the verdict was simple. Leave Kendrick alone. Now think about what leaving Kendrick alone actually means, because that phrase is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It does not mean stop making music. It does not mean concede the throne. It does not mean quit. It means stop directing your best bars at a man who has already used your best bars as raw material for his masterpiece. It means stop giving Kendrick the ammunition. It means write your own chapter in your own voice about your own life, and let Kendrick be Kendrick. And that is a message that carries because it comes wrapped in love. The 85 South show is not a hate machine. The 85 South show is a laughter machine. The 85 South show is the corner of the internet where the culture goes to breathe, to laugh, to argue, and to remember what makes hip-hop the greatest art form on the planet. And when a laughter machine sits down and speaks with this much clarity about something this serious, the industry listens. Now step deeper for a moment and put yourself in Drake's shoes tonight, because the picture is heavier than most people realize. Drake is not a rookie. Drake is not a one-hit wonder. Drake is a man who has spent a decade at the top of Billboard, at the top of streaming, at the top of pop culture, at the top of the touring circuit, at the top of the fashion cycle, at the top of everything a rapper is supposed to be at the top of. And now Drake is watching that same throne become the target on his own back. Every young rapper who came up watching Drake win is now watching Kendrick win. And the picture is rewriting itself in real time. That is a hard mirror to sit in front of. That is a hard set of headlines to wake up to. And Drake, according to the 85 South show, is trying to punch his way out of the mirror instead of walking around it. And here is where the analysts on the timeline are missing the plot, because the story is not about who is the better rapper anymore. That argument is stale. The story is about who is the better strategist. Kendrick has strategy. Kendrick has patience. Kendrick has silence. Kendrick has one Super Bowl, one anthem, one culture-defining moment, and a business empire quietly stacking behind it. Drake has volume. Drake has posts. Drake has features. Drake has the biggest catalog. But volume is not the same as strategy. And every day the 85 South show and every other cultural room out there is watching the two philosophies collide in front of them. And every day the strategy is winning. Now walk with me into the moment Karlous imitated Kendrick in the studio, because that moment tells you exactly how deep the culture is in on this. Karlous did the voice. Karlous did the delivery. Karlous did the pettiness. Karlous stretched out the phrase, "I heard what you said," the way Kendrick stretched out every syllable of "not like us" until the whole world was chanting it back. And when Karlous did that voice, everybody in the room fell out laughing, because everybody in the room recognized the voice, and everybody in the room recognized what the voice means. That voice is the voice of a rapper who is not going anywhere. That voice is the voice of a rapper Drake keeps trying to bury, and Drake keeps digging his own hole. And that is what the 85 South show captured better than any blog, any podcast, any timeline take, any hot take on any panel. They captured the mood. And the mood right now is that Kendrick is untouchable, Drake is uncomfortable, and the culture is having the time of its life watching both of them. Now zoom in on one more moment, because this one is going to travel further than any of the others. Chico Bean, in the middle of a laugh, said the sentence that turned into a headline. He said Drake wanted that lover boy something. He said Drake wanted the pop stuff. He said Drake wanted the vulnerability, the melodies, the emotion, the crossover, the Girl in the Bahamas song. And Kendrick took that from Drake by exposing the persona and mocking the Vacation records at the same time. Because when Kendrick said, "You messed up my Bahamas trip," Kendrick did not just take a shot. Kendrick planted a flag. Kendrick said, "I know exactly who you are, and I am going to make sure the whole world knows too." That is a level of psychological pressure most rappers never survive. And the 85 South show, in the middle of a comedy show, mapped out exactly how deep that pressure runs. Now let us step even further back and look at the wider frame, because the wider frame is the reason this whole story matters 10 years from now. Hip-hop, for the last 20 years, has been dominated by the Melody King era, the pop crossover era, the streaming era, the algorithm era. Drake is the face of that era. Drake perfected that era. Drake made that era. And Kendrick Lamar, in a single summer, put a period at the end of that era. Kendrick brought the boom back. Kendrick brought the wordplay back. Kendrick brought the West Coast back. Kendrick brought the anthem back. Kendrick brought the album as event back. And the 85 South show, in front of an audience of millions, quietly acknowledged that the era shift is real. And that is the storm Drake is standing in. Not a rap beef. An era shift. And era shifts do not lose to Desus. Era shifts have to be answered with era shifts. And Drake, right now, is trying to answer an era shift with a rap album. That is like bringing a knife to a tectonic plate. It does not matter how sharp the knife is. The ground is already moving. Now zoom out one last time and look at the big picture, because the big picture is where the story lives forever. Kendrick Lamar and Drake are, right now, the two biggest artists of this era. That is not up for debate. That is the table. And what happens between them is going to shape how the next generation of rappers writes their contracts, plans their careers, drops their music, and picks their fights. Because the entire game just watched Kendrick take on the biggest name in the room and win. Not just win, but win in a way that turned a diss record into a global anthem. Every rapper on planet Earth just took notes. Every A&R just took notes. Every label executive just took notes. And every rapper coming up right now is thinking one thing. Do not be the next Drake. Be the next Kendrick. And that is the shift. That is the pivot. That is the culture's tectonic plates moving under everybody's feet. And Drake, the biggest artist of a generation, is standing on a fault line trying to pretend the ground is not shaking. The 85 South show just told the world the ground is shaking. And the 85 South show is not wrong. And Drake knows it. And Kendrick knows it. And the timeline knows it. And now you know it too. So here is the last question of the night. And I want you to sit with it. And I want you to drop it in the comments. Because this is the question every rap fan is going to be asked in 10 years. When the dust settles on this whole era, when the streams are all counted, when the tours are all done, when the babies who were born the summer of Not Like Us are grown, who wins the memory? Do we remember Drake as the Melody King who dominated a decade and then took one L too many? Do we remember Kendrick as the surgical genius who finally cracked the code? Or do we remember both of them as the two giants who made this whole era matter in the first place? Because the answer to that question is being written tonight, in studios, in group chats, in podcast rooms like the 85 South Show, and in the comments section of this video. So tell me in the comments. Tell me who wins the memory. And while you are at it, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, and stick around, because the next video is going to break down the exact bar Karlous flagged, the exact Meek reference Drake buried inside his own project, and the exact reason Kendrick Lamar has not said one word since the confetti dropped in New Orleans. That story is bigger than this one. That story is where the next chapter begins. And listen, whether you ride with Drake, whether you ride with Kendrick, whether you ride with both, whether you ride with neither, one thing is undeniable, and the 85 South Show made sure the whole culture heard it. Leave Kendrick alone. Not because Kendrick cannot handle the smoke. Not because Kendrick needs the protection. But because the last time Drake did not leave Kendrick alone, the world got not like us. And the world does not need another one. Unless, of course, Kendrick already made it. And if Kendrick already made it, then Drake, wherever you are tonight, I hope the mansion is comfortable, because the mirror is about to talk to you again. And this time, the mirror is going to sound a lot like Compton. Welcome to the session. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.